Live tonight on the latest from 7 News, our Navy sets a new course. A fleet review out tomorrow. Smaller ships, shipbuilding jobs in 2 states saved. RBT in the ACT, the push to surprise our lawmakers with random alcohol and drug tests in Parliament. Mini tribal wars explode, a massacre of dozens in Papua New Guinea with police outgunned. And AFL player Taron Thomas given a hint at his suspension timeline for domestic violence.
The latest from 7 News with Chris Reason.
Good evening. The best way to repel China as the threat grows bigger is to make the ships smaller. That's the recommendation a top-level review of our Navy out tomorrow is expected to make. It'll suggest a new fleet of smaller, well-armed additions to the surface force able to rapidly deploy if we were to come under sudden attack. Critics, though, sceptical it'll frighten our foes. And to political reporter Isabel Mullen now in Canberra. Izzy, how many of these vessels will we get?
Well, Chris, we're told at least 8. There'll be corvettes or light patrol frigates. The move towards smaller warships is designed to allow more well-armed ships with greater firepower at sea at any given time. Our defence capabilities have been heavily scrutinised and under fire for being largely inadequate. The opposition claiming the Defence Force is underfunded by the Albanese government. At the same time, the Chinese Navy has become the second largest in the world. The Surface Fleet Review has warned the Albanese government that the Navy is not up to the task for the risks currently confronting Australia. So half of this new fleet is expected to be built overseas. The second half in Western Australia. The government will be looking to shore up votes in both WA and South Australia, announcing a plan for continuous shipbuilding in both of those states. Some defence experts are sceptical. It's unclear when these ships will be delivered and if it'll be too late to keep up with any advances in military technology. Hopefully the review will shore up a timeline when it is released tomorrow.
Indeed. Chris. All right, Isabel Mullen there for us in Canberra. Thank you. Border forces at breaking point, the opposition leader claims tonight after the arrival of 39 asylum seekers in Western Australia. Peter Dutton says Labor has ripped $600 million out of Operation Sovereign Borders. Anthony Albanese said that's complete nonsense. Budget papers showing funding is $470 million more than the coalition promised. The Commissioner confirming he has record high levels of cash. Another immigration detainee released after the High Court decision is tonight in jail, arrested by federal police, accused of failing to comply with visa conditions. The Iraqi-born man allegedly forgot to report via telephone 43 times. The 40-year-old among more than 24 charged since being freed. Well, it happens in all sorts of workplaces, airports, mines. Tonight, the question is, why not randomly test for alcohol and drugs in Parliament as well, after this second boozy episode involving a Nationals MP?
I really thank you for your evidence tonight, and I thank you because I, having sit in this place now for nearly 5 years, I have seen a dramatic change from when once the arts would come in and it would be this is what we're saying, you come prepared, you know exactly the questions I'm going to ask about the regions, and the regions are now a topic of conversation.
That was Perrin Davey, who admitted to having 2 glasses of wine before she slurred her way through a Senate hearing. It followed the unforgettable video of Barnaby Joyce lying on a Canberra street after mixing his medication with drinks. Independent MP Zali Steggall says the place where laws are made shouldn't be a standards-free zone, pushing for RBT in the ACT. And to Angelique Opie in Sydney, where a huge storm caught the city unprepared. Lightning struck people and set homes on fire. All sorts of transport delays too. Angelique, how's it looking tonight?
Well, Chris, the wild weather has eased for now, but today it's swallowed up roads. Tens of thousands were left without power. Most intense, the lightning. 75,000 strikes within 100 kilometres of the city in just 3 hours. 4 people were knocked unconscious by a lightning strike. They were standing underneath a tree near the entrance to the Botanic Gardens. They're all in a serious but stable condition, recovering in hospital. The rain packed a punch just after midday. 28 millimetres recorded at Sydney Airport, 27 at Badgerys Creek, 24 at Canterbury, 21 at Terry Hills. One runway at Sydney Airport was damaged, taking it offline for 20 minutes, triggering major delays. Hundreds of people were left stranded and wet when the T1 Western and T9 Northern lines were impacted. As signalling equipment was damaged by lightning, another long commute could be in store tomorrow, with more rain forecast for the rest of the week.
All right, thank you, Angelique. A bombshell revelation tonight from Queensland's Police Commissioner, Katrina Carroll, says she may not continue as the state's top cop when her contract ends in July. Pressure is building on her from disgruntled frontline officers who are daily working in the face of the state's youth crime outbreak. A last-minute move tonight to protect the public from a Snowtown murder monster, with new laws fast-tracked through the South Australian Parliament. Mark Hayden is due for release in May after serving almost 25 years for covering up the bodies in the Barrels killings. The changes allow extended supervision orders, including ankle bracelets and curfews, before he's freed. Well, tonight, for the first time, we're hearing from the sole survivor of a deadly mushroom lunch, describing how hard it's been, but that faith gave him strength.
Let me encourage you to keep on going. The way is sometimes hard, but God is good.
Pastor Ian Wilkinson returned to duties at his local church 6 months after he was left in a coma from a meal that killed his wife and in-laws. Friends say his next big challenge will be when Erin Patterson, the woman who allegedly cooked the dish, faces court. In breaking news, the widow of late Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has just claimed she believes her husband was poisoned by Novichok, a nerve agent. Yulia Navalny will meet with European foreign ministers in Brussels to discuss her husband's suspicious death. The 47-year-old has been sentenced to 19 years in prison, with mysteries surrounding the circumstances of his passing. At least 26 men have been massacred in Papua New Guinea's remote highlands in a tribal dispute. Tonight we're hearing the toll could be as high as 70. And before this next interview, a warning: it contains graphic images. Well, joining me now is Professor Sinclair Dinnan from the Australian National University. Sinclair, conflict between neighbouring tribes is nothing new in this region, but what's triggered this attack?
We don't know exactly what the trigger was, but I mean, the reports that we have seem to indicate that it was previous killings, which I think also indicates that this is a rolling conflict. It's not a fresh conflict. One of the things that's really changed, I think, in recent years is the intensity of the conflict, the casualty rates, which is associated with the use of modern firearms, high-powered firearms. We're talking about mini wars, and they escalate just in the same way that big wars do. There used to be constraints on days of old. Those constraints, traditional constraints, by and large, have broken down. Given that, and the fact that we're talking about a very remote area, quite lawless, how do authorities get this under control? It's very difficult. I mean, the authorities at the moment, they tend to go in with police mobile squads and with members of the Defence Force in a kind of fire brigade type approach. They go in and try and put the fire out, and then they withdraw because they're not actually based there. They're coming from elsewhere. The moment they withdraw, the fire erupts again. I mean, any police force, when it's challenged by people who have high-powered weaponry, who often themselves are outgunned by these fighters, it's a very difficult situation and very risky situation for them to find themselves in. It is in absolutely nobody's interest for the fight to go on. And it's really those local leaders who understand the complexities of what lies behind a fight that may have been bubbling away for years. The police can only go in there and, if you like, put the lid on a boiling pot. But to reduce the temperature and stop it boiling, that requires these local experts to play their part.
And of course, this comes as we just 2 weeks after we saw the PNG Prime Minister come through Australia, address our own Parliament, begging us not to give up on his country. Prime Minister Albanese has offered support to the region. In reality, what would that actually look like? We're not talking about boots on the ground, are we?
Not really. I mean, the Australian government already provides, a very high level of assistance and has done so over many years to both the RPNGC, the PNG Police Force, and the PNG Defence Force. So I think the kind of assistance that is likely to be offered, if it is asked for, and I'm not aware of it yet having been asked for, is probably just more of the same, which would be in the terms of police advisors, advisors to the PNG Defence Force, rather than boots on the ground. It's not a situation that I think either the AFP or, for that matter, the ADF would particularly want to get involved in. And it's not a situation where I think their involvement would necessarily make a great deal of difference.
All right. Sinclair, we greatly appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
AFL player Taron Thomas has a clearer idea tonight of how long he'll be suspended over a domestic violence incident. To Tyra Stowers in our Melbourne newsroom. Tyra, how long is he likely to be barred from taking to the field?
Well, Chris, good evening to you. We can tell you tonight the North Melbourne star is expected to be suspended for at least half of the season. Currently, he remains away from the club, having fronted the AFL Integrity Unit to answer questions regarding an alleged domestic violence incident. Now, it was last year he didn't play until round 12 after he was stood down by the Kangaroos over his behaviour towards women. Now, both the AFL and the club tonight insist the investigation is still ongoing and will require approval from the League's commission. Now, Taron Thomas's contract with North Melbourne ends at the end of this season, so his career is very much hanging in the balance tonight. Chris?
All right, Tyra, thank you. Star Casino's half-yearly results will be released tomorrow, and on the eve of a far more ideal development, the under-fire operator's Sydney venue becoming the subject of a second inquiry less than 2 years after a damning report which found it unfit to hold a licence. The Commission will examine if the casino has done enough to address its reported failings. Thanks for the memories was Taylor Swift's parting message to Melbourne. The pop phenomenon is tonight lapping up her luxury Crown penthouse in Sydney, the next stop on her Eras tour, with shows starting on Friday. Swiftie Mania moving on, but leaving groundskeepers in a race against the clock to prepare the turf for the first AFL game of the season. It'll likely take them 12 days to lay 12,000 square metres of grass. Well, the holiday doesn't come cheap anymore, even if you're cashing in on points. Frequent flyer programs frequently giving cost-conscious travellers headaches. Next, tips on how to use and maximise them. We'll be back after this. Frequent flyer points can be a great way to save cash while travelling, but new data out tonight shows we're struggling when it comes time to use them. A Finder survey revealed that in the past 6 months, 1 in 5 of us tried to pay for a flight with our credits. The equivalent of 811,000 Australians said they couldn't. 5% who could believe the exercise ended up being more difficult or costly than they'd imagined. Well, Finder's money expert Rebecca Pike joins me now. Rebecca, why are so many people becoming stuck on these issues? Is it because the system is deliberately difficult, or people are genuinely struggling with it?
I think that I understand their frustration. It can be quite confusing. You think it's a simple process of building up these points, you can exchange them for a flight. But actually, it is more complicated than that. You know, there are different numbers of points for different flights, and you can get the same journey on a certain number of points, then another journey a different day. The airlines know it's busier, so they rack up the points. It's much more expensive. So it is frustrating, and I understand why consumers are finding it very difficult.
It's so frustrating. So many people sort of come out saying, is it even worth it? Is it, at the end of the day, is it worth doing what you can to cobble those points together, join those frequent flyer programs, use all those point hacks that we know about? Does it really work?
If you are doing it right and well, yes, you can get some great deals, but it can take a bit of effort. You've got to shop in the right place, save up those points, and then if you are flexible with when you can fly or what kind of flight you want, you can get some really good deals. You can save a lot of money, and even not just on flights, but on accommodation, car rental, that kind of thing. So if you are doing it right and kind of considered about building up those points, it can be worth it.
So when doesn't it work?
So a lot of people kind of save passively. It's something that, you know, their credit card is linked to it and it happens, you know, every so often they build up some more points. But then you go on and realise you haven't built up enough. You do have to kind of, you know, take part in those supermarket deals that are linked to certain frequent flyer programs, really make the effort to spend through certain frequent flyer programs, and then you can build up those points much faster and actually get more from the money you're spending on other things.
It's interesting, the airlines tell us that Qantas says it's had 1 in 11 seats was a reward seat. Virgin saying it's offering reward seats on 80% of its flights. When you boil it down, the research you've done, is any one airline better or worse than the other?
Again, it depends where you want to fly and what you want to do. They both have great options, but you have to either plan quite far in advance or just be on the site at the right time sometimes. So, you know, it's really up to you what rewards program you want to stick with, but make sure you commit to one. You don't want to save up points with Velocity and Qantas, and then you've got two different rewards programs going and you haven't built up enough on either one to get anywhere. So pick one that you are happy with, and there's other perks and features as well, and then really commit to earning those points.
We all know about those little point hacks we talked about before. Are there any that are better than others, any that you recommend and say these are worth doing?
So definitely sign up to the supermarket rewards points. You've got Woolworths connected to Qantas, Coles connected to Velocity, and we're all grocery shopping anyway, so you may as well earn something back from that. So sign up to that, and also they will have points boosters. So while you're shopping, if you know that you need something, take a look at where you can boost those points and get more. The other one is with a credit card. If you are able to get a credit card and trust yourself to use a credit card responsibly and make the repayments at the end of the month, then you can use your credit card to do your normal shopping, you know, as you would spend normally, pay your bills, and then you're earning points again from what you are already spending money on. All
right, Beck, good tips. I'm always sceptical though with all of the airlines on those schemes, but we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll stay with us tomorrow's weather and the final frame coming up next. Well, let's take a look at the national weather forecast for your Tuesday. Showers in Brisbane, storms possible for a second day in Sydney. A high of 26 for Canberra, Melbourne, partly cloudy. Overcast in Hobart and Adelaide, mostly sunny in Perth, tops of 38 degrees. Now, WA reached a February record, 7 days that the temperature sat above 40 degrees. And drizzly conditions in Darwin. And around the regional parts of the country, a wet Tuesday in Townsville and Toowoomba, climbing to 32 degrees and mainly fine in Bendigo. Coober Pedy, a warm one on the way, and there'll be blue skies in Carnarvon. Well, tonight's final frame is royalty rubbing shoulders. One actual royalty, the other of the Hollywood kind. Prince William was sat next to a different Kate than he's used to at the BAFTA Awards in London. As the Princess of Wales continues her recovery from surgery, who better to sit alongside him than the Queen of the screen, Australian actress Cate Blanchett. The two shared smiles and traded jokes, looking like old friends, worthy of our final frame. Well, thank you for your company this Monday from the team. That's the latest. I'm Chris Reason. Have a great night.
Stream 7 News anytime, live and on demand on 7 Plus. And with 7news.com.au, you'll know the news now.